So hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Natalie Orsling. I'm an Assistant Director of Alumni Career Development here at UChicago. You are joining us today during our final Mind Your Career session of the year, so thanks for being here. We know as the year winds down, you're probably thinking about how you can start your new year off with a splash, whether you're entering 2023 looking for your next opportunity or you're trying to start the new quarter off with some improvements where you already are. We hope we can help you. That is what today's webinar is about. Welcome to Strategic Career Planning for the New Year. Today, we're going to talk about all of the critical elements and things that go into crafting a strategic career plan. And we're joined by Hallie Crawford, who is a certified career coach, author, and expert. She's been heading up her business, Create Your Career Path, for over 2 decades. Hallie and her team are well known for supporting all of their clients in their incredibly personal and detailed advice as they are on their career journey and have helped over 2,000 people find jobs that make them want to get up out of bed in the morning, go to work, which if you are anywhere as cold as it is today in December in Chicago, that's pretty difficult. I'm not going to waste any more time, let Hallie get started, but just so you are all aware, we're going to leave some time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout, please submit them in the Q&A function throughout the whole session, and then we will get to them towards the end. Hallie, thank you for joining us today. Please take it away.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. And when you said 2 decades, I was like, oh yeah, it makes me feel old, but that's accurate. It will be 24 years that I've been coaching and training next March, actually. And this is a really big topic that we love presenting on because we are always wanting our career coaching clients to be proactive about what they want in their career versus reactive. I think kind of the norm, maybe a little bit up until COVID or up until like something happens with our jobs, we tend to, and I've done this too, so no judgment, but we tend to leave our careers a little bit on autopilot, and hopefully our organization or our boss maybe helps us with career planning. We have a performance review, etc. But we really want people to be proactive about it and kind of take the reins as much as they possibly can. In addition to whatever kind of career planning your organization might do with you, that you do some of your own kind of on the side, and you have maybe some of your own personal goals that extend beyond you being where you are now. And we want you to be proactive about that for the new year, which is why we're here today. So the advice that we're going to give you about strategic career planning is going to be very holistic, looking at who you are as a person and what's really important to you in addition to your strengths and skills and experience. And it's advice that we give to all of our clients. So as we said earlier, we've been coaching for a long time. I have an undergrad degree from Vanderbilt, a graduate degree from the University of Illinois, and I actually lived in Chicago for a long time. So I have special affinity for you Chicago grads. And the way that we're going to present our material today too, we want you to think about it kind of as a step-by-step process. So to use the tips and advice as we progress in the order that they're presented, at least to a certain extent. Even if you've already started your career plan, there are going to be some kind of pieces and elements that you're probably going to want to insert along the way and add to your career plan as well. So let's talk about our agenda for today. So a couple of things. Please feel free, as we said already, to put any questions or comments that you have either in the Q&A box or in the chat box. As we get questions, like as we progress through the presentation, I'm happy to pause for a moment and answer something. So don't feel you have to save everything till the end. If you've got a question that crops up for you, go ahead and put it in there and we'll answer it as we go. We'll be providing some resources as we go too, and we will have Q&A at the end. Everyone will receive a copy of the recording of our webinar today. But if anyone also would like a copy of the slides, you can just email us at the email address on the slide here on the left-hand side, and we would be happy to share the slides with you, because some of the career model we're going to share with you, there might be some things that you want to print out so that you can use, along the way. So there are 3 kind of basic foundational keys that we would say are critically important to writing and clarifying or developing your strategic career plan. Number 1 is we want you to identify your internal priorities or goals, as well as your external priorities and goals. And we find that most times people will be really good at identifying those external things they want, like what's, the raise or compensation I want to get next year. What are my strengths and how do I want to leverage those more? What kind of training or education do I want to obtain? They're really good at those things, but a little bit less good at, which is part of why we're here today, at identifying those things that are going to help them be more challenged, more rewarded, and more fulfilled in their jobs too. And this is a much hotter topic than it has been, I think, ever, given everything that's happened in the past several years. People are demanding and wanting more work-life balance, more of a sense of meaning in their jobs, attachment to the vision or mission of their organization. So lots of things there that we want to think about. The second key is we want you to establish realistic, practical, tangible, yes, but also meaningful goals. And this point that we'll talk about here is about attaching your goals as much as you possibly can to your career values and things that would help you be more motivated to achieve those goals because they're going to be more meaningful to you. And then key number 3, obviously, is to develop that plan, and we'll give you some tools to do that along the way. And we'll have Q&A at the end, like I said a moment ago. So as we all know, post-COVID now, and now that we're looking at, inflation is on the rise and possible recession and all of the stuff that's been happening in the past several years, it's changed the way we work, and we think permanently, understandably. So many of us are in some way, shape, or form working remotely. Some people are back to the office full time. Some people are a hybrid model. We've had clients tell us, I never want to go back to an office, all the way to people that are saying, I'm really wanting to go back because the meaning for me and my job, it turns out, was the camaraderie with my coworkers or the attachment to what we're doing within our organization and being able to just walk down the hall and talk with someone. So whatever your situation is or whatever you want it to be, there is a greater focus on fulfillment, and we want people to focus on this even more so than they have in the past, because that's what's going to help you for your career plan remain engaged and challenged for the long run, so that you don't look back a couple of years later and say, okay, I've been really bored or I've been really frustrated with my job and now I'm desperate to do something. We want you to be proactive about it. And one of the things that we want you to think about when you're creating your career plan is to identify and align those goals and your plan with your career values, so that it's going to be more meaningful for you, but also challenging, et cetera, in the long run. And we talked about this a little bit already, why it's so important to really proactively manage your career. Our jobs are one of, if not our best asset. And lots of things may be coming down the pipeline. We don't want to be fear-based about this. We want people to be prepared. But whether, a recession hits and there's layoffs, whether we want to move on to a different job or we want to move up and get a promotion, it's really important to proactively, just like you would your investment portfolio, to really proactively manage your career. And a lot of people are talking now too about, I'd like to get like a side hustle to help either pay my bills or to help me move into a new career path. And that's easier to do than ever before, given the ability we have to work remotely. And there's been this idea for several years too of the gig economy, where people change jobs, more than they have ever before. And it's more acceptable and reasonable to do that. And some people will have multiple different jobs, at once. And I'm not saying any one of these is right. It depends on your situation and who you are as a person, but there's more options, I would say. And so we want you to think more creatively and kind of a little bit more outside of the box, if you will, about how you want to craft your career and what it looks like. It's not always just about the typical 9 to 5. It could be, but it could be that you've got a flex schedule. It could be that you've got a combination of working remotely, versus in person. There's lots of different kind of levers we can pull and push in order to remain fulfilled, challenged, and marketable. Average job changes during the course of people's lifetime is around 11. At this point, it might even be a little bit more in the past, several years. And so we want you to realize too that changing positions or jobs is, number one, it's more normal. It's not as bad if you know, have different jobs on your resume. And whether you stay where you are or you move on, you just want to be thinking about, okay, what's next for me? And it's okay to make those changes or have something that you do on the side, et cetera, to kind of enhance what you want to do for the long term. So the first thing that we want to do, and actually, let me just go back to this other slide here for just a second. The most critical thing that we want to kind of you know, have you all understand is how important it is to be clear about your goals and the direction that you want your career to head in the long run. We want you to be thinking 5-10 years out and working backwards on your plan from there. And if you don't know what your long-term goal is, that's part of what we're going to be talking about today. And we'll show you our career model. And if we could launch our first poll here, that would be great. Before you're creating or working on your plan, you need to be clear on your goal. Now, if you aren't really sure what it is, we've got some tools and resources that will help you with that. And by the way, too, if even after you think about this more and work on it a little bit more, if you're still not exactly sure, that's okay. Just put something down as a possible goal, and it will become clearer over time as you work through the tools and resources that we give you today. But like, think about this over time. You are not necessarily expected to know exactly what your career goal is 10 years from now, but we want you to work towards that and work towards that clarity and kind of have it in the back of your mind over time at the very least. So we'll take a look at this poll here. Oh, everybody's answered already, which is awesome. It looks like so far we've got the majority of people, 75% have some ideas, but they're not really sure which one is best. You're in the right place today. We'll help you sort that out and give you a checklist that you can use to narrow things down a little bit more. We've got completely unclear is 15% and 10% is clear but unsure how to get there. So depending on what your situation is, and thank you everyone for sharing that, that's really, really helpful to know. Depending on what your situation is, you may latch on to one of the tools or resources or action steps we give you a little bit more than others. But bottom line is, as much as you possibly can, we'd like you to be as clear as possible and work on this over the next couple of months. Give yourself some leeway to be working on what your long-term goal is. And one of the things that you can start to work on to help you narrow down your ideas, brainstorm completely new ones if that's you, or make sure that you're on the right track if you feel like you're clear already, is this ideal career model that we use with our clients. So the thing that is on the slide right now is basically the 8 things that you need to be considering in order to know if you're on the right track with your career path. Identify the right goals for you and make sure that you're covering all of your bases, okay? So to be in the ideal or right career for you, you need to be thinking about all of these components. From, is this going to be fulfilling and rewarding and challenging to me? Is it going to be the right fit for my personality type? Is it going to be the right work environment, compensation, etc.? So we'll walk through these a little bit more in the next slide. But the reason why we talk on this slide about internal versus external priorities is some of these things, the fulfillment and the enjoyment piece, are more about, are we enjoying and getting satisfaction out of our jobs? And then we start to look at the external, more practical, tangible pieces to say, okay, what are my strengths and how do I want to use them effectively, et cetera. And a lot of times people will forget about those internal pieces. We want people to think about the internal pieces first because they impact every other part of the career model. For example, if you're not leveraging your strengths and the ones that you really want to be leveraging at this point in your career, you're not going to feel fulfilled and there's going to be a big problem. If you're not getting paid adequately or in a way that you feel is fair, et cetera, or if you're not in the right work environment, you're not going to be fulfilled and it's going to be a problem in the long run. So we do want you to start with these internal priorities because in an ideal world, they're driving the rest of them. Now, we realize that there are practical considerations. You can't just go say, oh, I would love to be like an environmental photographer or whatever, and I'm going to throw caution to the wind and forget about the fact that I've got to pay all of these bills and all of that. We get that. There's practical considerations. But what we find is if you start with the internal priorities first, you are going to get closer to your ideal and closer to your goal as you start to use these other elements to kind of narrow down your goals and ideas based on practical considerations. It's kind of the concept of if you shoot for the moon, at least you'll hit the stars, okay? So let's talk about the model just a little bit more. Let me hop to the next slide here. So in terms of clarifying your goals for your strategic career plan, we want you to start with the fulfillment and enjoyment first, and then you can narrow down some of your goals and your ideas and also add to them based on practical considerations. The things that we are talking about when we're talking about fulfillment is to incorporate into your career plan what is going to give me meaning in my work. What are my career values and how can I align my career goals, where I want to go in my career, the right type of work environment for me, the ideal clients I want to be working with, et cetera, based on those values. So with fulfillment, we're looking at your values, we're looking at what can give you or what does give you meaning in your career path or in your job. Is it working with people more, or is it working with numbers? Is it getting out of the office and attending events, or staying in the office more and working on your computer? How can you be more aligned with, or what kind of mission of your organization or another organization can you feel like you can get behind a little bit more, so that you've got that meaning and fulfillment too. And we all want to have a sense of like accomplishment in our day-to-day work as well. Like we're leveraging our strengths and we're doing things that we're good at. So the fulfillment piece, you can start to fill that out using some of these concepts and ideas, and we'll talk about them a little bit more as we go here. The enjoyment piece, and again, we're on the internal part, you want to also think about with your planning, what are the ideal tasks that you want to perform now and that you'd like to perform like 5 or 10 years out, whatever kind of time frame works for you. So we want you to look at 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. What are the tasks that ideally you'd like to be performing? What are the core ones that you would be working on all day, every single day, but also those ancillary ones? So for example, as a coach, I get the most fulfillment out of educating people about these types of things we're talking about today, how to make their career more rewarding and create that plan to go get there. But I also get to do a little bit of marketing and editing and writing articles. I get to do a little bit of like creative work too, creating PowerPoints like this, etc. Those are ancillary tasks for me that I don't want to perform all day, every day. I would get bored doing it and I wouldn't get as much meaning out of my work. But I like having those as kind of icing on the cake. So we want you to think about your core tasks and also your ancillary tasks when you're creating your plan. Think of your career almost as like a pie. You've got the big piece of the pie. I am a coach. I am a data analyst. I am an event planner, whatever that is. But I also get to do a little bit of presenting or writing or whatever it would make sense for you, okay? And we do want you to think about what can you work on all day, every day, and it wouldn't take the joy or fun out of it, because that can help you determine which tasks should be core and main versus which should be ancillary. I'll use me as a really quick example. I enjoy the marketing and editing and writing articles, but guess what? I used to have a job before this one that was the main thing I was supposed to do all day, every day. It was a job in marketing and communications, actually at a university. There was nothing wrong with the job itself, nothing wrong with the university, the work environment there, etc. But I was not getting meaning and fulfilling out of what I was doing, or fulfillment out of what I was doing. Not enough, because it wasn't aligned with my values. And in some cases, the audience that I was serving was not quite as much of a fit. So I realized that coaching or something like that needed to be my core main task or role. And that the marketing and communication, it took the fun out of it having to do that all day, every day. So don't just go for something that because you're good at it or enjoy it a little bit or have a knack for it, don't just say, okay, well, that must be the career path I need to pursue, because you really want to think about, okay, what should be the main ones versus what should be kind of on the side, if you will. Let's talk about other goals. We want you to move to the strength section of the model, and the sun's coming in into my office a little bit, so I'm just going to shift away from the window. In terms of your strategic career plan, in addition to what would be rewarding for you long-term and what are the tasks that you want to be performing and how can you move in that direction, we want you to think about your strengths. So what are the strengths or skills that you'd like to leverage now, but also develop in the long run for yourself? Maybe you want to shift your career path or your role in a little bit of a different direction so you can leverage some different strengths. On this slide here are some of the future skills that employers and recruiters are asserting or assert that are going to be really important in the economy in the future. So today, going forward. You'll notice that a lot of these are soft skills, not every single one of them, but several of them are. So we want you to incorporate what are those strengths or skills that are like soft skills versus, oh, I need to learn this new software program or whatever. Those things are important. But what else do you need to add to your repertoire too? Things like emotional intelligence, innovation, and having that kind of innovative mindset, not just going with the status quo and how things are now. Social influence, analytical thinking. So you want to add to your plan, what strengths do I want to leverage and develop over time? We then want you to think about education and experience, these two pieces of the model, and incorporate any training that you feel like you need to get, certifications. Are there new projects that you want to be working on so you can steer your career in a little bit different direction or just get to that next level? And new skills as part of this too. We also want you to think about and incorporate into your career plan, what's the right work environment for you? What's your ideal team that if you're not in an ideal team right now, or maybe you're going to be tasked with creating a team long term, what is the right personality for those team members? Who are the people that you'd ideally like to be working with? And how can you move in that direction? We want you to think about your ideal clients or customers and the right culture that you'd like to be in. So what's the ideal work environment for you? Now we realize for some of you, you may be thinking, I need to make a change and maybe I need to make a change into a different industry or a different organization. But we also want you to think as it relates to your career plan for next year about changes that you might be able to make where you are right now. Is there a different way that you could approach your job so that you're leveraging your strengths in a more effective way? Could you talk with your supervisor, if it's appropriate to do so, or it would be okay to do so, about new projects that you would like to take on? Are there clients that you'd like to work with a little bit more and you can spend a little bit more time with, for example, because that will give you greater reward and fulfillment? So when we're talking about our career plan today, it could be about that when you look at this model, you're realizing, ooh, I can't get everything where I am now, but I want to stay where I am, for example, for the next year, because I want to learn ABC for my long-term plan. Some of you might say, ooh, I'm realizing I need to make a move sooner than later, because based on this model, I can't get the things that I really want in order to be fulfilled and effective, et cetera. And you may decide for your career plan next year that you need to conduct a job search sooner than later. It all depends on your situation and what you identify as your goals. But these are the elements we want you to consider in your plan. And last, but absolutely not least at all, critically important, are what kind of compensation do you want to be working towards based on your situation now. And remember that compensation isn't just about your salary. It's also about benefits, flex time, the work-life balance stuff that we talked about, health insurance, et cetera, 401k. So we also want you to think about, where do I want to be next year with my compensation? But even more so, like several years out. If you start to identify what the ideal role is for you in the next 2 to 5 years, let's say, and you look on LinkedIn or you do some searching, well, I'll say two things. If you look on LinkedIn to look at other people that have that role that you'd like to be in, check out what their career path was. What are their top strengths? How did they get to where they are? What were the key roles that they had along the way that enabled them to get to where they are? That can help you with your planning, and it can help you brainstorm ideas about where you might want to be, but what steps you might need to take. And secondly, once you start to identify where you'd like to be in the next several years, you can do a little bit of compensation or salary research on Indeed or on salary.com, and glassdoor.com has good salary research as well. We'll put some of these in the chat box here in just a moment. But this is where you can brainstorm and think about, okay, if I want to be at this place or at this compensation level, What are the steps I need to take? And what would be, if it's, 2 to 5% raise each year, am I going to be able to get there? And how do I make that happen? So all of these pieces, basically, we want you to incorporate into your career plan. And if you include all of them, you're going to cover your bases more than you would otherwise, just by going, let's say, on your performance review or the career plan provided by your organization. Let's give a couple of examples of how to identify some of these things from the career model that we were just talking about. So if, for example, you feel like you need a little bit more help understanding what your strengths are and how you can start incorporating those in a different direction or bringing some other strengths to light, one of the things we recommend and our clients enjoy doing, because it also boosts their confidence, is to talk to a few of your friends or family members over the holidays about what they see are your top strengths. We're looking for a top 3 to 5 strengths. What do you do better than anyone else they know that you may be discounting a little bit because it comes so naturally to you? You just assume everyone else is good at the same thing. And when they think of you, what adjectives come to their mind? Because that can help you start to work on and think about what your brand is and how you come across. Understanding your strengths finder assessment is one that we also like as well. And I'm going to put that in the chat box right now. So in addition to interviewing other people, you can take an assessment online. We like onetcenter.org as well. I'm going to put that in the chat box too, because that's another spot or place that you can take some quick quizzes that are for free online about your values and about your strengths, et cetera, and help you brainstorm possible alternative career ideas too. When we're talking about fulfillment and clarifying your values, remember that's this basic bottom line piece. We'd really like you to identify your career values as well. And as part of those values, come up with action steps in your career plan, how you will honor those values on a regular basis in your career. And we'll talk next about how to identify fulfillment in your career values. And remember, we said earlier too, ideally, if you can attach the majority of your action items in your strategic career plan to at least one of your values, it's going to be that much more motivating for you. You're going to know that it's the right action step to take versus you're just coming up with something because your boss told you to. Now, we realize sometimes you absolutely have to do that. But if you can attach it to a value, it's going to be that more effective for you. So 3 ways that you can start to think about how to define fulfillment for yourself in order to incorporate some of these elements in your strategic career plan is to think about, how do you define success? What does success mean to you post-COVID versus what was success to you beforehand? It's kind of good and helpful, I think, to think about what does it mean now versus before, because you'll notice what some of those differences are and can start to incorporate those things into your plan. Journal about this for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to take that long, but what does success mean to you? And double check that some of those goals are incorporated into your plan, or make sure that they are. The second thing that you can do to start to define fulfillment is to think about your ideal day at work. What would that look like? What qualities would it have? Can you get any of those elements or qualities where you are now? Or do you need to make a move? Or is this where you want to be in 5 or 10 years? Now, listen, we understand that while we want you to go for the gold and the ideal, like we're saying, we all have to compromise in our jobs too. It's never going to be perfection. Know that that's normal, reasonable, and to be expected. But what we tell our clients is that when you are choosing where you're compromising, for example, your commute for your job is a little bit longer than you'd like, but you love it, so it's worth it to you. And maybe you ask for a little bit, can I get off early on Fridays or work at home every other Friday or something like that. Get as close as you possibly can to your ideal, but be clear about where you can compromise, and that will make a huge difference in your satisfaction, okay? And then number 3 is to identify your top 3 career values. And we'd love to launch, this is our second and our last poll for today, just double checking our time to make sure we have time for Q&A. But we are really curious about how many people actually do know what their current career values are and how to align their career with those values. So one of the ways that we'll have our clients identify their values is to do a personal peak experience exercise. and write about it for a few moments. A personal peak experience, what we mean by that is a moment or a period of time in your life, could be any time in your life, that you felt really lit up, satisfied, things were rocking and rolling and just flowing for you. And you want to think about that peak experience and what was cool about it for you. It could be a trip overseas. It could be that you were the high school editor of your yearbook. It could be an event that you planned. It doesn't matter what the experience is. What matters is how you felt about it and what you can pull from that that could be possible values for you. Asking yourself the question, what was cool about this for me? Why was it a peak experience? Was it about the fact that you were doing some planning and organizing? Or was it more about the experience that you were creating for other people, or the data that you were analyzing for your parents or a friend or family member to help them make better financial decisions? There are values in everything and every experience that we encounter, and how we make our choices and our decisions in our lives and in our career, we want them to reflect those values. So work on the peak experience exercise. Please know that there could be values embedded in the other pieces of the career model that we've shared with you as well. And some of your values are going to come up or show up in your response to how you define success and what your ideal day at work is. And it looks like so far with the poll, we've got 70% are saying no, they don't. And that makes perfect sense. So please know you're not alone. And that's why you're here today. Totally fine. And 30%, which I think is actually a really good number. The number keeps growing over time because I think people are paying more attention to this. 30% are saying, yes, they do know what their values are and how to align their career with it. So think about your values. This is the soft side of this career planning, but will help you make sure that you're in a career path and that's going to sustain you and challenge you and be fulfilling for you in the long run. Okay. So defining fulfillment. Let's take a look at, oh, and I did want to say this really quickly before we get to our next key. Sorry. If any of you feel like you need help with anything we've talked about so far, we are doing our end of year sale where we have a $50 off coupon code, and the coupon code is actually right there on the slide. Feel free to set up a strategy session with me directly. I'm happy to talk with you about our coaching services and give you some additional advice on anything we've talked about today. But I did want to just let you all know that we've got this sale going on too, and you can take advantage of that if you decide you want to sign up with us. But just email me at admin@createyourcareerpath. I'd be happy to talk with you further. Key number 2 is establishing these realistic, like we said, looking at other people's LinkedIn profiles to see what their path was, knowing what, for example, your current organization's policy is for raises so that you know what to expect for compensation next year. But we want you to attach your goals to your values as much as possible, because that will help you be more motivated to achieve that goal, and it will be more valuable to you overall holistically. You'll be more on the right track with your career path in the long run, and not just choosing something because someone else told you you should, or because you're supposed to do it. Or, for example, we'll have clients that come to us and say, you know, I've been in this career path for a really long time and I'm really good at it. Does that mean that this is what I'm supposed to do for the rest of my life? And when they're not happy, we always tell them, no, absolutely not. You may not be able to go suddenly be an astronaut or something completely different tomorrow, but is there a career path that is related to what you're doing now, that you could identify transferable skills and move into that and be more fulfilled as a result? So when you establish and are starting to think about your goals, start with your values first, like we said, and try to attach all of the goals in your strategic career plan to at least one of your values. We would love it if people would put their career plan like in front of them in their office or on their office wall and have those values listed there as well, so that they're really clear about why they have those goals established. And as part of this, what we talked about earlier is we want you to consider what's important to you now. What are the strengths that you want to leverage? And if what has meaning or what is meaningful to you has changed over time due to COVID and all the changes there in the workforce, we're hearing this a lot from our clients, that they'd like to have more of a social impact. They'd like to mentor mentor other people more, I should say. They want to feel like they have a more tangible impact within their organization or outside of their organization. And even though people are concerned about a recession, they are saying to us, and what we are telling them, maybe you stay put for a little bit longer at your job because you need to see how things play out a little bit more with the economy. And there's nothing wrong with that. We still want you to think about what you do want in the long run for when things start to get better again. And what we're finding is, despite the fact that people are maybe a little bit more nervous about changing jobs right now, they're still not willing to settle for less and say, well, I'll just have to stay put. I can't do anything about this. Find ways that you can find greater meaning where you are at your current job by adjusting your work schedule a little bit, or like how you approach certain tasks or your day. The things that we talked about earlier, because you can make some changes where you are now. Even if they're small changes, what we find is that you can have really big results with these small kind of minor changes to align things with your values more. As part of key number 2 in establishing your goals properly, we'd love for you to take a quick glance at this leadership wheel. These are top leadership strengths that are really important in today's economy. Some of them may be more relevant to your role or your organization than others, but it can be helpful to evaluate yourself, do this quick self-assessment. How good are you at each of these leadership strengths? Which ones really matter within your career path or within your organization or your long-term goals? And incorporate some of these leadership strengths within your plan based on what you feel is going to be important and help you get to that next level or that next place or job in your career too. It's really nice if you can also ask your boss if that's comfortable for you, or someone else within your organization that knows you well enough work-wise to rank you on this leadership wheel as well, so that you get that objective opinion too. And as part of establishing your goals, going to the next slide here, we want everyone to think about emotional intelligence and the goals that they would like to establish related to enhancing this. You'll notice, or you may have noticed, in our list of future skills closer to the beginning, several of those, like we said, were soft skills and emotional intelligence related. Emotional intelligence is so critically important in the workplace. And we like this book that's listed on the slide here, because this is like, you could be the smartest person in the room related to your job. But if you can't communicate what your ideas are effectively, get other people on board with those ideas, build those relationships at work so that those ideas can be implemented, the intelligence you have, it's not going to go very far. So emotional intelligence can help you turn your intention into action, make good decisions about what matters most to you and your team. Just a critical piece to being successful. And if you feel like there's any elements, these are the 4 elements on this next slide of emotional intelligence that you should incorporate into your strategic career plan, we want you to focus on them. Some of you might say, I need to buy the book. I need to check it out a little bit more. The 4 elements of emotional intelligence are the self-awareness, self-management, the social awareness, and relationship management. And the ways for you to kind of evaluate where you're strong or where you need a little bit of help are questions listed on this slide here. That can help you kind of assess where you are and what some of the goals you might need to work on could be for you to add to your plan. We like classes on LinkedIn Learning and Coursera.org as 2 possible places that you can get some help with this or some support. Obviously, we work with our clients all the time on emotional intelligence. It's really, really important, especially as we have moved into, in some cases, a remote working environment and people are working all over the place and from different places. This emotional intelligence is even more important in today's economy. And key number 3, and we'll start to move toward, I see some questions coming through and I'll answer those in just a second. I figured since we're close to the end, we'll hold those for that. Key number 3, obviously, is to create your plan, start to write things down. Some guidelines we've already mentioned for creating your plan is start at 5 years, 10 years, whatever makes the most sense for you, how far out you can look in terms of your career, and work backwards and say, if I want to be here in the next 2 years, let's say, What do I need to do to achieve that goal? Use the career model. Identify 1 to 2 goals under each of those pieces so that you're ensuring that your plan is really, really comprehensive. We really like it when people create like a vision board that helps them be emotionally attached and motivated to the things that they want to achieve, as well as a plan. Some of our clients will create a plan just in a Word doc. Some will create it in an Excel sheet. We like the Excel sheet because it helps you kind of track your progress, and you can put the different elements of the career model into that. They could be tabs across the bottom of your Excel sheet. That's what we usually recommend and use with our clients. And include also in your plan any obstacles to success that you know you currently have. If you're a procrastinator, if you tend to not have as much confidence and that doesn't enable you or allow you to speak up as much as you should during meetings or promote yourself, those are things we want you to incorporate in your plan as well. And make sure that you're checking or updating your plan at least quarterly. Check it out, see where you're at. You need to make some changes. If you're not sure exactly what you need to incorporate into your plan just yet, use the model as a starting point. That's why we've shared it with you. And know that it's better to have something written down versus nothing. Just put some stuff on paper. You can always adjust it over time. But creating your plan with the training experience that you might want to get, incorporating like who can you get support from along the way in your career. If you have got a mentor, and if you don't, would you like to get one? Like, what are the other elements that you need to incorporate in order to be successful in implementing your plan as well? Get support and accountability from a coach, your boss, a friend, a coworker, whatever is best. And think about, as we said, how can you overcome any blocks to success and how you can work on those. And also, what do you need to do to kind of expand and strengthen your network over time so that if you do need to conduct a job search next year, you're ready to go and you've got that network in place. And then finally, our last slide before we get to Q&A is to create the plan and implement it. And we like for people to think about like you're the CEO of your career. And if you need to start a job search, or even if you don't, we want you to think about the items on this next slide here in terms of implementing your plan. How can you make sure that you're developing a portfolio of experiences and strengths and skills that are going to help you be marketable and build your brand? Make sure that you're taking enough risks in your plan to try something new or push yourself out of your comfort zone. Make sure that you're creating or actively seeking opportunities across or within your organization that you can incorporate into your plan. And again, making sure that you're marketable. And make sure that when you're thinking about a promotion, your salary goals, and your long-term plan too, how does this fit in, or your career plan fit in with your life goals? And the flexibility that you'd like to have there, or the kind of money you want to be making in the next couple of years so you can take your foot off the gas a little bit more if that's where you are in your career progression. Okay, so let's think about next, and we'll start to answer the questions. 2 action steps that you will take in the next couple of weeks. I know we're heading into year end and holiday time for people, but we want you to start thinking about this now so that you're ready and you have your plan ready for the new year. So write down 1 or 2 action steps. We'd love it if you'd share your action step in the chat. It could be interviewing other people. It could be, I'm going to review the career model so that I can start on my plan kind of one by one. Please know that we don't expect your plan to be written in like 2 days. This is something that is an organic document that we want you to be working on and changing over time, just like your resume can kind of be like that, okay? So give yourself at least a few weeks to be working on a draft of your plan, and then you can change it and adjust it over time. All right, so URL, thank you for answering that, Natalie. Yeah, the URL, I didn't put the www, sorry about that. Okay, so we've got a question here. When changing careers, how can we position ourselves against candidates with a lot more experience in that new role? Think about constructing a competitive advantage absent experience. So this is a great question. You want to include anything like that, like training or education. You can put those closer to the top of your resume to kind of make up for lack of experience. If you do have any coursework or certifications or anything that you have in or going towards that new direction. You also can focus, instead of having a chronological resume, a functional resume, to focus on transferable skills. And if you don't have quite as much experience, this is also two other things where you can focus on your soft skills and maybe your unique set of experience that you have that could really help them, even if it's not the exact experience they're looking for. And when you're searching for these types of jobs, this is also where you really want to leverage your network so that you can try to explain to them, look, I may not have the 10 years of experience in ABC that you're looking for, but this is why the experience I do have could actually be really valuable to you. So you want to kind of take that lens, if you will. A second question is a great one too. How do I know if my plan is too aggressive? And how do I know if it's reasonable but still challenging myself? This is where it's a good idea to look at other people's LinkedIn profiles, like we were saying, and kind of look at what their progression or their path was. And also, honestly, where it's a good idea to get someone else to give you some feedback on your plan as well. Because having that outside perspective and a different kind of opinion, like this sounds like kind of what you've already done, or, you know, could you challenge yourself a little bit more in this area? That just getting someone else's opinion can help you with that a lot. But also looking at other people's career paths, and as well as some of your past performance reviews. Where have you excelled? And are you, for example, kind of coming up with the same things that you've already said in past years? That could give you a clue that you need to challenge yourself a little bit more. Another question is, how can I cultivate leadership skills if I'm not in a leadership role? This is great. See if you can, I don't want to say adopt, but like try to take a greater leadership role by generating new ideas, by helping others in your team, like within a team that you are already in. You could do some volunteer work outside of work where you could be in a leadership role or serve on a board or something like that. You could take a leadership course. That's something that you could put on your resume. So try to find ways that you can get leadership experience outside of your work, but also even just kind of taking a more a leadership kind of perspective or role within a team that you belong to, as an example too. You could speak with your boss about how you could take on more leadership roles and see if that's something that could be something that you put, you know, for one project. Maybe you can be the lead on a project next year, for example. Another question is, how do I identify my strengths? Interviewing other people is a great way to do that. And then the Strengths Finder assessment, I can't remember, Natalie, if you could put that in the chat, that'd be great. I can't remember if I did that. Identifying your strengths through the Strengths Finder assessment, but also the onetcenter.org. I believe that they've got a free strengths assessment as well. Another person asked, and these are really good questions. Thank you, everybody. How do I know if the actual career plan is to move on to a new role? This is a great question. We would use our ideal career model that we shared with you today, use it as a checklist. And if your current role does not check all of those boxes, then there's a good likelihood that if you can't make changes for those boxes that are missing within your current role, that you need to move on to something else. This is what we coach people on all the time. And we use the model as like a checklist that can be kind of your litmus test. How do I talk about this career plan with my boss or my team? Great question. It depends on your relationship with your boss or your team and if they would take it well and be open to it. If they would, we would share it, like come up with kind of a draft. And you may not share the draft with them necessarily right out of the box, but you might say, you know, I've started to work on a career plan for myself personally. Do you mind if I share that with you and some of the components? Is that something that we could incorporate into my actual performance review planning so that it's a little bit more formalized? So ask them if they're open to it and something that they'd be open to you sharing with them. And depending on what they say, you can share the whole thing, you can share elements of it. But we like for people to do this if it's something that they feel comfortable doing so with their boss. It's a great idea. How do I assess if I'm actually following my career plan down to the line? How should I check in with myself? We'd like you to check in with yourself quarterly and check if you've achieved the goals that you have wanted to so far. So Put something on your calendar to check in with your career plan quarterly. What we will do with our clients is we have a quarterly coaching package where, for example, we'll work with them in 2 sessions to create their strategic career plan, give them a template, etc. And then after that, we'll have a coaching session with them every quarter to double check. Are they on track? Do they need to make changes? This is called our roadside assistance program. So whether you get someone outside to help you with it, or you just have it on your calendar, either way, but have something that's like a task or a calendar appointment to make sure that you don't forget. And finally, how can I help my team create their own career paths as a team leader? We would recommend thinking about these elements of our model here to help drive a conversation with them about what would be rewarding to them and invite them to share those things with you. How do they want to leverage their strengths more? So from a very simple kind of basic perspective, is use the career model to help them, like, to have a conversation with them about what they might want to be different and what elements of their performance review or their career plan they feel like they would like to incorporate a little bit more. Ask them if they're open to it and if they'd like to talk about it. And you can just use some of these pieces to kind of get the conversation going. Really good questions. I love it. Any others, Natalie, that I've missed before we hop off here? I feel like I got them all.
Yeah, I think you did. Thank you everyone for participating. We really appreciate it. And thank you again, Hallie, for being here. We really appreciate it as always. If you guys have been to a session with Hallie before, you know she is always very helpful. So we're always happy to welcome her on. For you that wanted to hear more from her, like she said, her team offers that career strategy session. Definitely take it up. I will be sending you all that information and the links that she provided in the chat and a handout. So there'll be lots of resources coming your way in that follow-up email, as well as a recording of the session in case there's anything you wanted to go back to and follow up with.
Yep.
And thank you all for being here today. If today inspired you to make 2023 the year that you focus on your career, I'm excited to say that we will be running Career Month in January. Career Month is our month that's dedicated to supporting you on your career journey, providing resources and community from your fellow UChicago alumni. We have organized it around 4 different sequences: creative careers, technology, leadership, and social impact. And we are really excited to have a lot of great speakers coming for that. I will throw a link in the chat to all of our career events where you can find us starting to share some of those ones that are coming up for Career Month and more to come as the month follows. But again, thank you all for being here today. As this session ends, a survey will pop up to ask how you felt it went, any advice for us, any requests from us. We like hearing from you all, making sure that we're planning the correct events and the most helpful events for you all. But thank you again for being here. Thank you again, Hallie, and we look forward to seeing all of you very soon.
Happy holidays, everyone. Thanks for being here.